Well, let's bring this down a little bit to a specific project or at a project level. And how do we ensure that we get net zero or as close as possible to that in these projects? And maybe you can talk a little bit about specific technologies that are used, or maybe it's stricter regulations, but how do we ensure that at a project level?
If I have to refer, I would say, to World Economic Forum, they actually came up in 2020, I would say, with 4 clear, I would say, areas that can help drive, I would say, the net zero. And one of them, of course, is the decarbonization of the electric grid. I think that's where it starts from. And I think there's a lot of work being done, whether it's geothermal, whether it's solar, whether it's wind energy. How can we really harness these, I would say, renewable, I would say, energies to decarbonize our grid? The second area they highlighted was the electrification of the building space and I would say the heating space. And here we have technologies like heat pumps, which is really, I would say, gaining speed now in this period where the natural gas is also becoming, I would say, more, I would say, costly. So the electrification of the space is also really important. And then we have, I would say, a wide range of energy efficient solutions and technologies that if you have a chiller, if you have a air conditioning unit, if you have a heating unit, how can you, I would say, make that more energy efficient and really driving down the, I would say, the energy demand. And then I think that the last one, Jenna, which you mentioned about digital, I would say, element. I think there's a lot of new smart technology. There's not a lot of AI that is coming in. I believe that we can harness that in helping become more net zero. But these are the 4 areas that I see really help us to reach that goal.
You mentioned AI. Just a disclaimer: there's no AI today. We're all here. We're live, and I think all our answers are live, so and original. So thank you. Just it's becoming.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think you both, Vikas and Jenna, brought up a really good point. What I really like, I mean, the technology is fantastic, and there's a lot of smart things happening, but I think if it didn't start with the pull from the end users, which I think is fairly new, right? I mean, for the longest time, it was the government pushing, right, saying we need to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, or we need to electrify. And it was more, it felt like the, governments pushing solutions onto the marketplace. But now, the more you talk to, real estate companies, the more you talk to, end users and building owners, occupiers, they're pulling the demand for net zero buildings, right? So, and that has created such a shift in the momentum, right? It's so much easier to have people sit around the table and talk about how do we get this building net zero when everybody's involved and invested in getting the solution down in the first place. And that's something I think in these past a few years, maybe, during those COVID era and all that kind of stuff, people had a chance to reflect a little bit while we were all locked up in our houses. But that I've really seen a big shift there. And I think, I know sorry, Michael, the question was on technology, but I really think that was, if we want to look what's driving more net zero buildings, it's not the fact that we have a new widget out there that we can suddenly, right, get free energy, right, and nuclear fusion or something. It's really demand in the market pulling it, I think, has been really driving this for the last few years.
Okay, excellent.
Vic, can I add to that really quickly? Just an example, because, the idea, like, do we need stricter regulations? And I think one that I love to point to a lot is the Pittsburgh 2030 district, because throughout the whole region, 1,100 building owners across every sector committed to these large goals, and we've tracked the data on it. They're coming out of, it's a voluntary program. It's making a decision and wanting to move forward, but understanding there are real positive benefits of that. So collectively over the last 10 years, or maybe it's 11 years, these numbers, they've saved nearly $400 million in utility costs. So there's a financial side of that. We also know they've invested over $2.3 billion to improve their buildings. And collectively, they're close to almost 45% reduction in carbon emissions. And so it's again, that point of data driving the investment, but it also helps change the end user's interest in wanting to move it forward. And how the market has changed over the last few years, we realize buildings are intricately connected to our entire economic system. Yeah. So there's a lot of incentive for sure. Moving things forward. Mm-hmm.